It's an understatement to say there is a lot going on right now. This particular march looks like it is now moving down Broadway. The Occupy Portland protest has really taken over downtown Portland.
The Portland Police Bureau estimating this at 5,000 to 6,000 people now. The march about 5 blocks long.
This is what democracy looks like!
A vocal crowd of protesters took over the streets of downtown Portland. They zigzagged from block to block.
Who are we?
Down in the crowd, a wide variety of people told why they came. The student.
The corporations have really just taken a lot of our futures away from us, and we aren't just going to stand by and let that happen.
The retired teacher.
Wall Street's gotten too greedy, corporations have gotten too greedy, companies that are making profits that are not bothering to give back.
The union construction worker.
We're not the problem. The problem is the bankers and Wall Street that have destroyed this economy and then turned around and blamed it on working class people like myself.
But we wanted to dig into how it started and what the main message is. So Pat Doris went out to find some answers. Pat?
Well, Reggie, a local sociologist tells me it seems to be an organic movement that stems from widespread worry. Many in the middle class fear their shot at the American dream is gone.
Kind of reached a point now where people have started talking to each other and realizing it's not just them that got downsized, and so there is this thing that's happening, and sort of it's an organic thing that's happening as people are kind of checking in about how the economy's affected them individually.
And as you're watching this, we should point out, remember, this isn't just a march through downtown.
Right.
The idea is to occupy a space of Portland. So it's unclear to us right now if this is the space they've chosen or if they will move again.
Portland police announced that it will allow the protesters to stay downtown overnight. The city has suspended the camping ordinance for the 2 parks where they've assembled. Below us, you can see that particular area. It's around 3rd and Main downtown.
At the first sign of nightfall, Ted Hess of Vancouver started setting up his tent. But this is no campground. This is Lonsdale Park in downtown Portland.
I think it's fantastic. I was unsure of what we were going to end up with.
We went into the crowd specifically looking for a person who wasn't looking for the camera's attention. And what we found was a mom who has a very common story. She, like so many people across America, aren't having a very easy time making a go of it with her family. And so she drove up here, like so many are doing across the country, to make a statement and do something that she really doesn't do in her life: protest.
Here's what Catherine Moore from Salem is not. She's not an impressive musical performer. She has no clever protest sign.
Hello?
No megaphone.
Separation of corporation and state.
She's a woman on a park bench.
In today's economy, we can't get ahead.
She's surrounded by strangers, Occupy Portland, and its noise.
You people have done everything in the world to me.
Make no mistake, though, she's a mom on a mission.
I have a 16-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. You feel so useless at home, and I really wanted to come out and say, we can't keep doing this to our middle class. We're dying.
Moore's husband works 2 jobs, 7 days a week.
And I stay home with my children because we just can't afford the daycare. We own our home. We have a mortgage. We don't have any credit card debt. We don't overspend.
She's joined Occupy Portland, demanding the end to corporate greed because she and her family can't figure out how to make it in America. This is not her normal crowd.
My friends have no idea this is happening. They had no idea before today. No clue.
And this isn't really even about her. It's about who she's here to represent.
But I have a 16-year-old, and he's going to be going to college. Well, we'll see. I mean, he wants to go to college, and it's for him and for my kids. And if we don't stand up now, I don't know that there will be another chance.
What is going on here? If we divide, we have failed ourselves!
Tensions were high. Many demonstrators sat in the middle of Main Street, despite Portland's mayor telling them to move out.
We are right now trying to get it for emergency vehicles, mass
No, I gotta open the street. Sorry, I gotta open up the streets, everybody.
Portland Mayor Sam Adams met face-to-face with demonstrators. He warned them they've got to get off Main Street to clear the way for buses and cars. Occupy Portland shut down the street as part of their almost week-long protest.
Keep the street! Keep the street!
So early this morning, police moved in. The drama played out live on News Channel 8 at sunrise.
Yeah, we just saw a number of police, as you're seeing them now, walking through the streets.
Officers took down barricades and tow trucks removed several vehicles from the street. Some protesters wouldn't budge. Police arrested 8 people. They're charged with disorderly conduct and interfering with police.
When you hear Occupy Portland, chances are you think about what's happening a few blocks from here. Folks who've been camping out for weeks. Well, today was different. A lot of the same values here, but the crowd was more mainstream at the square, and they were backed by popular musicians and even a couple politicians. It was Occupy Portland like the city hadn't seen or heard. Backed by Pink Martini and Storm Large, thousands joined their voices in song.
I think it's great. It gives people hope, and I think it's quintessential American.
Commissioner Randy Leonard supports the march like he has all of the marches over the last several weeks, but he doesn't support protesters who may camp out at Jameson Square, and he sent Occupy leaders this email today informing them of his stance. Commissioner Randy Leonard says that city leaders have gone above and beyond by allowing encampment at Lounsdale Park and Chapman Square. He says Jameson Square is not the place for that. He believes protesters are heading for Jameson Square because they think the area is full of wealthy people, when in reality, Leonard says the neighborhood has a lot of single mothers who are living in studio apartments with their children.
I'm on Jameson Square trying to sleep at our house, and it is just absolutely crazy insane here, so I just wanted to call and make a noise complaint.
Those are a couple of the calls that came into the non-emergency line. A couple of dozen people were arrested early Sunday morning as Portland police cleared out the Pearl District Park for violation of curfew laws. Stay with News Channel 8 for continuing coverage of the Occupy Portland protest.
He says he falls in the 1%, but he supports the 99%. And late this afternoon, Michael Moore stopped by Shrunk Plaza in downtown Portland to rally Occupy Portland protesters.
The only way we're going to succeed is if everyone here is a leader and goes back to their neighborhood, to their school, to their church, to wherever, and bring more people into this.
This is breaking news. At 5 a.m. this morning, want to bring our new viewers up to speed. We're following breaking news in downtown Portland. Police in riot gear moved in just about a half hour ago on the Occupy Portland protesters who had moved into the federal property of Terry Shrunk Plaza downtown.
The protesters had been asked to leave, but 10 decided to stay. And that's when in the pre-dawn hours, Federal Protective Service officers started the arrests. Most walked out on their own with hands cuffed behind their backs, but at least 2 people were carried from the plaza. And it was tense moments for our own reporter Art Edwards as one of the protesters got heated.
Don't not touching. We've been working really hard.
The mayor says he doesn't see any reason for occupiers to take over Shrunk Plaza because he's already given them 2 full city blocks.
I wanted to make sure that the enforcement by the federal government of the park closure on Terry Shrunk Plaza was done in a peaceful manner.
We are back now with the Hot Box. Tonight, has Occupy Portland worn out its welcome? After several weeks of more or less peaceful protests, police have started arresting demonstrators. First at Jameson Square in the Pearl District over the weekend, and then Terry Shrunk Plaza early this morning. Portland Mayor Sam Adams is back from his trip to Asia. We appreciate you making the time and coming here to talk to us about this.
These are extraordinary times, and we have occupations in cities around the whole world. When I was in Hong Kong on Thursday, there was an Occupy Hong Kong, and mayors across the globe are having to make these sort of decisions that balance the right to free speech with just sort of the practical realities of keeping a city moving and limiting the impacts of that free speech.
The protest continues to grow, and you can see campers over here at Terry Shrunk Plaza camping out despite arrests made earlier this week. Now, a few protesters tell me that the whole movement is growing at a rate they can't keep up with, and that has some protesters worried about their safety.
Pressure cooker! Pressure cooker! Drugs! Drugs! Stabbing! Stabbing! Sex offenders! Sex offenders! Heroin! Heroin!
Gina Roning says those are some of the issues growing at Occupy Portland. As the Occupy Peace and Safety Officer at the camp, she's been there since day one. Her main issue now is growth and not knowing the dozens of people flooding into the camp.
And the concern is as the occupation grows and as there are more tents in our current structure, we're not, as our own occupiers, we're not really able to get a good read now necessarily on what's in here and what's going on, and we want to make sure that we can.
It really hurts the message that we're trying to put across to everybody.
Wendy Hamilton doesn't like what Occupy Portland has become. She says there's rampant drug use and has witnessed 4 violent assaults on people. 4 too many. She's leaving the camp.
It used to be a tent also. It's gone now.
Jeff Billings admits there's been problems at Lonsdale and Chapman Squares. He says he works security and peace for Occupy Portland, and lately he's been busy.
I've broke up several knife fights, and we've taken their knives from them.
He maintains the troublemakers do not represent the Occupy movement, and he says they're trying to address the safety concerns.
We're doing what the police aren't able to do because they are truly afraid to come inside.
Police say they've been called to the encampment dozens of times in the past month for reasons ranging from theft to drugs to menacing with a weapon.
Get the f away from us! Don't come back!
On several occasions, News Channel 8 employees have been pushed, shoved, and cursed at by demonstrators, including today.
We are the 99%. We don't want you here!
From October 6th to November 6th, assault cases nearly doubled in downtown Portland from this time last year. Bike thefts are up about 50%, and trespassing complaints back out here live now have more than doubled.
Tonight's KGW.com poll, we're asking how long should the city allow Occupy Portland camps to remain downtown, and an overwhelming majority say the protesters should already be gone. You can weigh in at KGW.com. Remember, this is not a scientific poll.
Tonight at Terry Shrunk Plaza, a couple hundred protesters packed the bricks for perhaps the most important General Assembly to date.
They gave us an eviction time of 12:01 a.m. on Sunday morning.
That's right. At midnight Saturday, demonstrators will no longer be allowed to occupy Chapman or Lonsdale Squares or Shrunk Plaza. The mayor made the major announcement at an early morning press conference.
We have sought to be as supportive as we possibly can. But I cannot wait for someone to die in the camp.
It's eviction night.
This is definitely not the end of Occupy Portland. This is one phase.
The midnight deadline nears.
Camps already clearing out.
We have outreach workers here that are talking to people that need shelter.
But the crowds grow. Police patrol and unmask the dark with floodlights.
I'm not about to gamble my life or my safety on it.
The big question now, will the protesters occupy or obey?
Good evening, I'm Joe Donlin.
And I'm Tracy Berry. We are now only 1 hour out from the Occupy deadline.
Everyone right now just basically waiting to see what happens next.
We don't know what the police are doing. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if 55,000 people are going to show up. We don't know what's going to happen.
Police put up huge floodlights and they're patrolling the parks. Demonstrators are also equipped. Many have their faces covered and are prepared with gas masks.
I'm very excited, but I'm also, I'm concerned because I've seen how it went in Oakland and I've seen violence at several occupations from the police to the peaceful protesters.
Take a look over my left-hand shoulder, several police officers on horseback standing at the ready, and then further away, take a look at this, across the street from the encampments. Look at all this. This is a crowd that has gathered. These are not demonstrators. These are simply spectators who have descended on this downtown area.
And this crowd has really swelled in the past hour to 2 hours. Earlier in the evening, several hundred people. Now, I would say well over 1,000. This was a fairly well-fortified camp. Just earlier in the week, there was an information tent set up, a library, a first aid tent, a working kitchen set up, an information booth. Those have all been removed.
But I think to honor this movement, people are really working hard to avoid violence, and I'm very hopeful tonight when the deadline comes that there's no confrontation.
It is definitely part spectacle and part protest. I would say within the last 10 minutes or so, I've certainly felt a very large uptick in that tension in the air as people are waiting for that countdown, which is now just a few minutes away.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
certainly an interesting reaction to this deadline that police set for these folks to get out of Chapman and Lonsdale squares. At this point, it appears to be almost a celebration. They're passing around the bubbly, they're cheering, they're dancing, and everyone thought this would kind of be the time when police would be coming in to potentially make arrests, but instead, it's more of a party.
I'm seeing at least a handful of police officers just standing here in full riot gear, but pretty much allowing them to just be joyful and seem to be having a good time.
The mayor, I think, underestimated the amount of support that Occupy Portland has, and I think we're seeing that right now. I mean, we have thousands of people down here. It's peaceful. The only people with weapons are the police.
Tensions are definitely starting to rise a little bit. If you take a look at this live shot right here, we just noticed within the last few seconds, literally, that this large group of people who, as we already saw earlier, were dancing and having a great time, taking over Main Street, have now started to push their way towards police.
Police are trying to remove protesters from 3rd Avenue. They've stepped in front of the line of traffic and are blocking traffic right now. An officer working to clear the way.
Now, keep in mind, there is no food down here. The porta potties are gone, and the people down here are getting restless. They're kind of wondering, when am I going to get arrested? I've heard that several times.
Oh, my gosh.
For a certain generation, people who were born in the 80s and the 70s, there's never really been a social movement like this. So it's like, for some of those folks, this is their generational moment.
This has just got very tense. Go ahead and take a look here. We have the mounted police that have just come through and started to push their way in. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but the police have started to put their riot gear on and they've started to push through. They're run through right now. Take a look if you can see. And they're starting to push through. It looks like there's somebody down. There's somebody down right here. I'm not sure if that's a police officer or not. They're trying to put through the loudspeakers. They're yelling, "You need to get out of the road."
It looks like, is that an officer who's been injured right there, Abby?
That is a police officer, yes, that has been injured.
Now there's a scuffle. Chief Mike Reese is involved in the scuffle. There you can see.
The officer that we saw injured and taken away earlier, the Portland Police Department is now confirming that that officer was hit by some kind of a projectile. The Portland police have been emphasizing that it's been peaceful until this point, and that's the way they wanted to keep it, but there is a certain faction that has been hoping for a confrontation, and it looks like it's occurring in some places.
Whereas emergency circumstances require, you may be subject to the use of force, including chemical agents and impact weapons.
Now it's a whole different tact. You can see their shoulder to shoulder. They have a lot longer of a club, if you will, and again, it's more for containment.
This actually
is the officer.
Okay, who was hit in the leg by a projectile, and you can see he's in some pain there as they load him onto that stretcher and then take him off for treatment. But we heard from Lieutenant King that he was going to be okay.
But things are a little more relaxed now. People just really milling around, taking pictures and waiting for something to happen. And you almost have to wonder if that's what police want and have wanted all along.
And this is continuing now as we come up on 4 in the morning.
They intend to open this intersection, and if folks don't, then they risk the possibility of arrest. Folks are retreating. This is interesting to see. You can see the demonstrators backing away. They are indeed moving back to the sidewalks, moving back towards the square, and it appears the demonstrators are retreating after this face-off that we've witnessed here for several hours. During the situation, as demonstrators were cheering and very excited, they decided to give a round of applause to the Portland Police Bureau and then began to chat, "You are the 99%, you are the 99%.
Until those parks are vacant, our Portland Parks and Recreation ecologists and survey teams can't go in there and do the work we need to do.
It does not look like a city park that we know. It looks completely different. I mean, I almost at a loss for words at times looking at this.
The parks are open until we close them to the public, which will include a fence, and it'll be very obvious when they're closed to the public.
In many demonstrations, both here in the past and in other cities, there's a flashpoint. There's something that happens that starts the confrontations, and it very well could have happened last night. We're fortunate it didn't. It really looks like people are down there picking up, cleaning up. We've got city trucks down there to help with that, and if we do have to end up going through and removing people who are vetted and just don't want to leave, it'll be able to be done fairly peacefully and fairly easily.
And there are several people that are being zip-tied right now and arrested. Now, I was over there when all of this happened initially, and those folks were given the choice to leave to go to another park. They chose to stay. Many of them linked hands and just waited.
And it is just absolutely not clear at all. As you take a look, you can see that it goes back an entire city block of people.
You can see more of those metal chain link fences are getting put up. This is what the mayor talked about, closing down the parks, and today is that day.
And we're just here to keep them back, let the parks guys do their job, and then once that happens, we'll be able to reopen the streets, and frankly, I think most people will go home or go on about their day.
They're telling the crowd that they are going to reopen Main Street to vehicular traffic. And you can see the police are moving back. They are moving, and I believe they're going to Pioneer Courthouse Square. At least that's what we were hearing they plan to do. The chant went out,
Courthouse Square. Here's our camera.
March.
There's no longer any protests in those squares. The tents have been taken down. More than 50 people arrested in the past 24 hours, and what is surprising, I think, to all of us who have been anticipating this, only one officer injured as a result of the deoccupation of the downtown parks.
Well, this is basically American rights in action, our right to voice our opinion. Whether or not it's popular, as long as you are peaceful and you have a goal, you should be able to voice your opinion. Basically, this is democracy in action. I mean, this is what we fought for. This is what the Constitution exists for.
And it was pretty amazing to see the restraint on both sides, really, and the resolution of the group marching away into this location here at Pioneer Courthouse Square, where they've been for a few hours now and trying to decide just what's next. So that's where it stands right now. They're looking for those who need a place to stay tonight, the immediate issue at hand, where they'll go, and then beyond that, the bigger picture of where this movement is going to end up and where it's going to carry on from here.
Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and welcome once again to my guest, Portland Police Chief Mike Reese. Thanks again for being here.
It's a pleasure.
You know, a lot of people have armchair quarterbacked and saying that the mayor and you allowed the camps to stay too long at Lonsdale and Chapman Squares, 39 days. It was 36 days when the mayor finally gave the deadline of Saturday night, last Saturday, Sunday morning. Do you think that it went on too long?
Well, hindsight's always 20/20. It certainly from the onset, we were cognizant that this was a national event and it wasn't unique to Portland, and it was something that was happening in large cities across the United States, and we wanted to really be wary of moving too quickly to end what we thought was a very unique and peaceful event.
How should Occupy Wall Street evolve? Blazer Rose says occupiers need to do something. Volunteering at service charities, write blogs and letters to the editor, run for office. Blicky says protesters should back a presidential candidate and create a legitimate third party for the U.S. David M. says not evolve, dissolve.
The numbers are in, and we now know more about what this movement cost the city of Portland. Early estimates by Portland police find they spent more than $450,000 in overtime this weekend alone. Add that to the $300,000 in overtime leading up to this weekend. The protests have cost the city an estimated $750,000 in overtime, and that does not count what it will ultimately cost to repair the parks.
This is all part of the N17 or November 17th demonstration against banks These demonstrators say they intend to shut them down with peaceful, non-violent protest. As I look inside the windows, I can see a few individuals there inside the branch. What you're looking at now is the entrance into the State Insurance building. These demonstrators do not appear to be budging. They're basically sitting their backs against the wall. I can see one woman kind of going limp, and there's a bit of a scuffle right here at the window. Things have settled down now. But here you can see a woman looking fairly professionally dressed. Police putting zip ties on, preparing to arrest her.
You know, this has been going on since October the 6th. Our officers and our bureau has been stretched. You know, we continue to respond professionally. I think we're better today in managing situations like this than we've ever been. But still, as an organization of people, you know, it pushes us, it strains us.
Police trying to move back some of the protesters here outside the Chase Bank. Whoa! 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 Something's just getting violent here. I'm sorry, I almost fell down. Scotty, we have someone that just fell. Whoa! Whoa! It's getting a little rowdy out here.
Yamhill Street from Broadway to 6th Avenue is being reopened.
Here come the police officers down the street right now. They're going to try to push everyone onto the street, onto the sidewalk rather, including us.
Remain in the street. You are subject to arrest.
And things are still pretty tense out here. The mounted police are out here, police in riot gear as well. They're blocking the Max track as we speak. And here, things are getting a little tense right now. Pepper spray is being used right now. Pepper spray is being used out here on the street. I'm going to move away. They have just pepper sprayed several protesters here at 6th and Yamhill.
To my knowledge, this is the first time pepper spray has been used on the crowd through any of Occupy Portland up to this point. Mike, go ahead.
And it looks like there was a protester or two brought into the middle of police. They, if I can get a look, they are getting, it looks like apprehended and arrested by police in the middle there.
This is a shot that we're taking from inside our studio, and a number of protesters you can see out behind us are right now having their eyes washed out with water, or they're taking a seat or being tended to by other protesters.
There they go. They're moving. Something's actually happening. Police are all running down the street.
Oh, here they come.
Right here,
they're right behind us.
Behind your window there.
They're right behind us.
Being thrown in the air as well.
They ran through the intersection as quickly as they could to maintain positions and then hold those positions, and that's exactly what occurred. Basically, they were assembled in lines. They said, now's the time, and they all ran down the street quickly to grab their positions and then hold those positions to keep the crowds back. Obviously, it appeared to be a tactical move. These demonstrators are chanting as police retreat and move out of the intersection of Southwest 6th and Yamhill.
Things returning to some sort of normal out here at 6th and Yamhill again. The Chase Bank is clear. That lobby is now clear. And the intersection, for the most part, is clear right now as buses and Max and cars head on through.
A News Channel 8 photojournalist takes us through exactly what it feels like to get pepper sprayed. John Gudgel was caught in the middle of the melee when officers fired the pepper spray. You can see him here turning and leaving after getting sprayed. He says the effects of the spray are immediate and intense.
And immediately your eyes just shut, and you feel them watering up, and your nose starts gushing out, and you're incapacitated. You know, you can't do anything because you can't see. You could try to open your eyes for, a split second, but that's not going anywhere.
When it comes to the economy, everybody's got a story to tell.
Portland State sociology professor Randy Blazak says today's N17 march against banks shows the Occupy movement is still evolving.
We've gone now from this broad issue about corporate greed, and we started focusing. Yesterday we saw an issue at Portland State with college tuition, and today really the focus became about the banks.
Where the movement goes next remains to be seen, but Blazak says scenes like the one that played out today will likely keep the momentum alive.
If you want to really excite people, those images of people being pepper sprayed are things that are going to keep this issue on the front burner, or else it just becomes another of the many stories that we have in the news.